Ok, estamos haciendo la conexión en unos segundos.
Listo.
Ya, bueno, vamos a esperar. Ok, ahora sí estamos en vivo, ya podemos iniciar.
Bueno, buenas tardes, señores miembros de la Junta de Directores de la Academia de Ciencias Físicas, Matemáticas y Naturales, señores de esta academia y otras que hoy nos acompañan, familiares, señoras y señores. Bienvenidos todos. Quiero iniciar mis palabras felicitando al profesor Michael Clegg por su ingreso como miembro correspondiente extranjero a la Academia de Ciencias Físicas, Matemáticas y Naturales. Es oportuno resaltar que la Academia de Ciencias Físicas, Matemáticas y Naturales, en su esfuerzo por promover el desarrollo de la actividad científica y sus aplicaciones, promueve el ingreso a la corporación de destacados científicos de diferentes nacionalidades. Tradicionalmente, este acto se realiza en una sesión especial desde la corporación. Sin embargo, por razones de bioseguridad ante la pandemia COVID-19, nos vemos obligados a realizarlo vía digital. El reconocimiento como miembro correspondiente extranjero es conducido por un jurado calificador formado por 3 miembros de individuos de número designados por la Junta de Directores de la Academia, quienes realizan su aceptación basados en el reconocimiento a sus meritorias labores de investigación científica, así como el reconocimiento a las contribuciones originales y sobresalientes que constituyen aportes significativos al conocimiento y bienestar universal a través de la promoción, el desarrollo y la difusión de la ciencia y la valoración del conocimiento. Ahora, en este momento, el doctor Claudio Bifano se va a referir precisamente a todas esas grandes contribuciones que ha realizado el profesor Clegg y que nos van a confirmar que muy merecido su incorporación como miembro académico extranjero a nuestra academia, miembro correspondiente extranjero. Entonces le damos la palabra al doctor Claudio Bifano para que inicie su presentación de todas las cosas que el doctor Clegg ha realizado y que nos permitieron que lo seleccionásemos como miembro correspondiente extranjero.
Gracias, doctora Goldwasser. Y el doctor Bifano va a proceder a hacernos una breve semblanza del doctor Clegg.
Well. Let me see what can I say about this very important person. Really, the Academy's Board of Directors has conferred on me the honor of presenting to our Assembly Professor Michael Clegg, who will deliver the Conference of Incorporation as a foreign corresponding member after a long period of waiting since his election. I really appreciate the honor of saying a few words about a friend that I respect and admire. In addition to being internationally recognized as a very relevant scientist, Professor Clegg is a friend of this academy who visited in 2007 at the IANA's General Assembly and later in a meeting of the IANA's Executive Board held in Caracas. From his position of IANA's co-chairman, Professor Clegg has always shown a special interest in science in Latin America and has been particularly alert about the difficulties of doing science in this moment in our country. For this reason, we believe that the presence of Professor Clegg in our academy is very important, both as a scientist as well as a recognized exponent of scientific international relations. Michael Clegg is a distinguished professor at the University of California, Riverside and now at Irvine. His research specialty is population genetic and molecular evolution. During his academic career of more than 40 years, Clegg has published approximately 170 research articles, book chapters, and has co-authored or edited 9 books. Professor Clegg was elected to the U.S. National Academy of Science in 1990 and to the American Academy of Art and Science in 1992. He is also a member of the World Academy of Science since 2006. He has been, as I said before, co-chairman of Viana for 2 terms, and he is corresponding member of several scientific academy of Latin American countries like Argentina, Mexico, Brazil, and now Venezuela. He has been Secretary of Foreign Relations of the National Academy of Science of the USA between 2002 to 2014. In this position, I had the pleasure to work with him several times. And he has held numerous, I will say hundreds, of other highly relevant positions in the international science scene. Continuing to relate Mike's curriculum would take the entire time of the session. So I will be short and give the floor to you, Mike, to hear about the role of science academies in capacity building. Thank you for being there, and thank you for your interest of share with us our troubles and our joys.
Well, thank you so much, Claudio. I'm sorry that I can't be with you in person, and I hope that this will suffice. But I look forward to seeing you sometime in the not too distant future. I want to thank all of the members of the Academy for honoring me with membership. I'm deeply grateful and honored, and I know some of you from the years that we've worked together. I'm going to try and see if I can use the screen sharing function to display the slides that were part of my talk. I apologize for speaking in English. It may be a little easier to follow if I use slides.
Yeah.
So I'll try and see if I can. It says host disabled participant screen sharing. So
yeah. I am asking.
Okay.
So let's see if I can allow report. Ignacio, por favor, ponga al Dr. Clegg de coanfitrión para que pueda compartir su pantalla.
Seguro.
If not, I can speak without them.
No, don't worry. No, you will. You will be able.
Listo, ya está como confitrión
You
de...
can share now.
Okay. Now let's see if I can make this work. Okay. All right. Well, thank you once again, and please accept my apologies for speaking in English. The topic that we had chosen was one about the role of science academies in capacity building. It's a very important topic, and I'm pleased to be able to speak about it. Something that bears really very little emphasis is that the 21st century faces a lot of of quite large challenges, some of which may be existential. And these include things like climate change, which is maybe the greatest challenge of our era, but also pandemics and emergent diseases. We're currently experiencing the reality of that. But over the last 30 years, there have been 5 or 6 individual pandemics of different origins and kinds. So these are frequent occurrences, not rare occurrences. We face challenges with food production, with water supply and quality, energy, land degradation, ecosystems and species preservation, and the quality of life. These issues are not independent. They are interconnected. And so one of the things that has to be done is to take a systems approach to trying to manage and to using our best science to manage the challenges that we face over the next 30 years or so. I want to talk about the role that science academies can play in helping us address these challenges. But first, I'd like to ask the question, why is the voice of science crucial? And the answer is straightforward and really doesn't bear much emphasis. That is, science is the world's most successful means of knowledge creation, deals exclusively with arguments based on evidence, and the results of science are subject to independent confirmation and validation. So we can be fairly certain about scientific knowledge and findings, and they help point the way to managing big issues. Why should every nation want to promote science? Well, I think, again, the answers are obvious. There's general agreement that much of the wealth creation of the 20th century derived from science-based discoveries in health, agriculture, engineering technologies, and a host of other areas. So science is an engine of wealth creation, and it's an engine that creates better human well-being. It is also generally agreed that a key to participation in the economy of the 21st century for every country is well-developed national science, technology, and health capabilities. And I'll use the abbreviation STH repeatedly to stand for science, technology, and health. What are the national payoffs from promoting science? There are many, but 3 immediate ones are creating a workforce that is able to compete in the global economy, producing citizens who can make wise decisions in democracy, and creating a scientific temper for the nation, increasing tolerance and rationality. So, capacity building. What does it mean? Well, basically, it means trying to help other countries develop their own science and technology capabilities. We know that there's inequity in the distribution of capabilities of accessing knowledge. And so it's very important to try and reduce those inequities, and capacity building is directed towards that. While many problems that we face are global, the solutions must be implemented nationally or locally, because there's not really an international or global government. And so we have to work together to do things country by country. And so it's crucial that developed countries assist in developing STH capabilities in developing countries. Well, what's the role of science academies in all this? Well, the implementation of solutions to global problems must occur through national or local governments, as I've already argued. Most nations have academies, so that we have essentially access to colleagues in every country. Academies embody the independent voice of national science communities, and academies can link scientific communities with policymakers. Some of the valuable attributes of academies are that they are merit-based and include the scientific leadership of the country. Academies are self-renewing institutions by electing members. They're self-renewing and they're largely free from political influence. Finally, academies have the credibility to inform the public and policymakers about looming problems and potential solutions because their membership includes distinguished scientists in each country. So here's just a list of a potential agenda for academies within each country. There are various other items that might be added or some that might be subtracted, but a preliminary list is that academies can provide STH advice to governments. They can participate in national efforts to identify national science and technology goals and priorities. They can help governments to assess strengths and weaknesses of national capacities for achieving S&T goals. They can encourage new centers of excellence and address research issues of national need. They can promote the upgrading of educational programs and institutions. And they can provide information on STH issues of importance to the public. So it's an important agenda for academies in each of our countries. Now, I'd like to say a few words about how the US National Academy of Sciences tries to meet those agendas. First, let me say that the establishment of the US National Academy of Sciences occurred during a period of great crisis and stress. It occurred during the US Civil War in 1863. The charter for the Academy was actually passed by the Congress of the United States and signed by President Lincoln. And it had in it a requirement for the Academy, which was unique, it was special. It was not something that other academies generally did. It stipulated that the Academy had to advise the government on issues of science and art. In those days, art was the term used for technology, whenever the government asked for it, without compensation. And that meant that the Academy had a public service role, but it also meant that the government had an obligation to listen to the Academy when it asked for advice. So that was the origin of the US National Academy of Sciences. But over the years, it's adopted a broader perspective aimed at not only the US, but also at international engagement. And some of the, some of the elements of international engagement are driven by the fact that challenges in science and technology are predominantly global in nature. Science is increasingly transborder and global in its conception, exploration, and application. Sustainability challenges are global and do not respect national borders. So they're very good arguments for international engagement on the part of all of our academies. In the US National Academy, particularly during years that I was involved as Foreign Secretary, there were three key themes that sort of drove our international engagement. One theme was enhancing national and international security through increasing pathways of communication. And I'll give an illustration of that in a moment. A second is improving global sustainability and economic welfare. And a third was enhancing human and institutional capital on a global basis. So in the context of international security and equity, the first point that I mentioned, the Academy tries to approach this through a couple of major activities, and there are standing committees of the Academy that engage in these activities. One standing committee is called the Committee on International Security and Arms Control, and it has played a very important role over the years in working together with its counterparts, first in the Soviet Union and later in Russia, on issues of nuclear weapons materials control, on issues of bioweapons. It's worked together with the Chinese Academy of Sciences on developing a glossary of security terms so that language differences don't create misunderstandings about technical issues related to security. Another important standing committee is a Committee on Human Rights. The Committee on Human Rights advocates for individual scientists who have been denied their freedom based on their expression of views or on their scientific work. And that committee has played a real role in helping to free a number of scientists who have been incarcerated in various countries around the world, and including in several cases in the United States. And then the final point is one of scientific equity, that is sharing knowledge. We try to do this by making the research reports in PNAS freely available to all developing countries. And we also make the reports of the National Research Council, these are the reports that advise government, freely available as PDFs internationally to achieve this notion of equity. So I'm going to talk about a couple of examples of multilateral cooperation aimed at capacity building. The US National Academy of Sciences tries to do this in a couple of different ways. One way, which I'll come back to in a moment, is by working with regional groups of academies, specifically in one case with the academies of sub-Saharan Africa. A second way is by being an active participant in global networks of science academies, and I'll address this later. So with regard to the African Academy Science Development Initiative, this initiative spanned the years that I was Foreign Secretary from 2004 to 2014. And it was a very ambitious project to help academies in sub-Saharan Africa develop the tools to effectively advise their governments. It was funded by a very generous grant from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and it provided direct support to a subset of academies in sub-Saharan Africa. As a result of this project, the number of academies in sub-Saharan Africa actually more than doubled during the period of the project. After the end of the project, the African academies themselves took ownership of the project and continued to run it. The policy reports that were generated by the various academies have had real impact on sub-Saharan African governments in areas particularly of health. Now, let me talk about some of the other international science organizations that are very important and that that the US National Academy engages with, but so does the Venezuelan Academy. So a couple of major global science organizations are the Inter-Academy Partnership, or IAP, the International Science Council, and of course the World Academy of Sciences, TWAS. And then I'll mention later the regional academy networks and talk about the distinctive roles of each of these organizations with a particular science network of the Americas, which is the Inter-American Network of Academies of Sciences that Claudio mentioned in his introduction. So a brief word about the history of the International Science Council and of the Inter-Academy Partnership. The International Science Council actually traces its origins back to 1899, when a consortium of science academies from Europe and North America established an organization that persisted up through the early part of World War I, but later fell apart as the result of the destruction of World War I in Europe. It was reconstituted in the post-war years in 1930 under the name International Council of Scientific Unions, or ICSU. And then recently in 2018, it broadened itself to bring in the social sciences by incorporating the International Council of Social Sciences and renamed itself ISC, or International Science Council. The ISC does a lot of very important work, not only in coordinating disciplinary science related to global cooperation, but also in trying to develop reports that address big picture challenges like the ones I mentioned. The other key organization is the Inter-Academy Panel, which became the Inter-Academy Partnership and was established around 1995. It came into being as a result of a meeting in New Delhi in 1993, that wanted to address the sort of big picture issues of population, human population pressures. A group of the academies at the meeting got together and jointly wrote a white paper on population. And that white paper was released around 1994, and it included 18 academies that wrote it. And it made it what at that time was a very important and novel observation, and that was that the key to managing population growth was the empowerment of women around the world. That led to the creation of the IAP based on a UN meeting in Cairo in 1994. So the IAP actually came into existence in 1995 as kind of a voluntary organization of science academies. It held its first General Assembly meeting in Tokyo in 2000. And in that meeting, it developed an important report on sustainability challenges. And it also agreed that the major focus of IAP would be on capacity building. It adopted formal bylaws at the Tokyo meeting, and it chose to lodge its secretariat with TWAS, the World Academy of Sciences, in Trieste in Italy. A major and very welcome event occurred in 2004 when the Italian government decided to provide support, core support for the IAP, and it continues to do that to this day through its contributions to UNESCO. So after its establishment, the IAP played a role in developing in a major global report for the United Nations on capacity building. And the report was called Inventing a Better Future, a Strategy for Building Worldwide Capacity in Science and Technology. This report was written by a very distinguished committee, co-chaired by Ismail Sergeldin of Egypt and Jacob Pallas of Brazil. And the bottom line conclusion of that report was that to succeed in the global economy, every country must possess its own scientific capabilities. You need your own scientific capabilities in order to fully access, assimilate, and utilize the modern knowledge resources in the world. So let me now say a bit more about the power of networks like the IAP and the regional networks. Networks are, like the IAP, are important because they include members in most of the countries of the world. There are 144 academies of either medicine or science that comprise today's IAP. And the IAP speaks for the world's science academies on a number of major issues like climate change, many issues of health, most recently on the COVID challenge. So it's a authoritative global voice for science. But speaking globally is fine, but to really reach down to the level where the message needs to go, you need regional approaches as well. Regional networks are important because the major regions of the world are heterogeneous in culture, language, environment, levels of economic development. And so you need to be able to craft these messages in ways that work best in the regional and local context. So you translate the global issues into a regional context. These are also valuable because they reduce transaction costs. It's much easier to hold meetings on a regional basis than a global basis. And they increase the engagement of local academies in these crucial cooperative activities. So this brings me to the Inter-American Network of Academies of Science, which goes by the acronym IANS. And you can see I've listed the academies by the geographic regions in the Americas. There are actually about 21 members today. Every major academy, every academy really in the hemisphere is included in IANS. The organization was founded in 2004 at a meeting in Santiago, Chile. Venezuela was a founding member, and IANS at the beginning decided that the best way to achieve its capacity building goals was by working on specific projects. So the initial goals of IANS were the development of academies in countries lacking academies. And this has led to the creation of academies in several countries, including Ecuador and Nicaragua, which did not have them. It's also led to the reinvigoration of academies in Bolivia, Guatemala, Honduras. And so it has strengthened academies at the local level. It's also worked to develop science associations in countries that lack the science depth for an academy. It has active programs which are focused on human and natural resource development. And it works to extend the IAP and ISC programs within the Americas. And finally, it's a way for science at the regional level to relate to regional government organizations like the Organization of American States. So the goals of IANS's programs are to enhance human resource development in science, technology, and health by advancing opportunities for women in science and by improving the quality of science education. It works to develop programs that employ science to provide solutions to major societal challenges, such as water resource needs, energy development, and food security. And I'll give you examples of these in a moment. And it works to promote science, technology, and innovation strategies for economic development, poverty reduction, and quality of life at the national and regional levels. So in terms of the natural resource programs, there's a program on water that Venezuela has played an important role in. And this program has actually produced major publications which deal with specific issues in water. The first of which was essentially an atlas of water resource issues in the Americas, and that's Diagnóstico del Agua en las Americas. The second was a compilation of country chapters on urban water challenges in the Americas. The third is an excellent compilation on water quality issues in the Americas. And the program is working now on yet a fourth major contribution on groundwater challenges in the Americas. I mentioned the IANS Women for Science program. It's done wonderful work. It's a very committed and visionary leadership, as has the water program. one of the things that the Women for Science program did that we're all very proud of was a wonderful kind of magazine format publication, which is shown here, Young Women Scientists. And this features a young woman scientist in each of our countries. And it's again, available for free as a PDF in Spanish or English on the IANAS website. Another wonderful publication was a book on brief biographies of distinguished women scientists drawn from each of our countries. And that too is available in PDF form in Spanish and English. I'd like to also talk in a little greater depth about another IANAS-based project that was quite important and that I played a role in myself, so I feel very close to it. Back about 5 years ago, the IAP decided to launch a global project on food and nutrition security. And the Leopoldina, which is the official German Academy of Sciences, actually got significant money from the German Research and Development Ministry to help fund this project. They decided, the IAP decided that the best way forward was to actually have 4 parallel regional projects on food and nutrition security. And so IANAS led this project for the Americas, and it produced a major volume, which is composed of 20 country assessments or chapters, a regional assessment for the Caribbean region, 232 scientists in our hemisphere contributed to this volume. There are also special boxes on major cross-cutting issues, and it's available once again in PDF form in both Spanish and English. Finally, there was a standalone regional summary report. The big volume is about 700 pages, so it's good to have in your library, but it takes a while to read. So there's a briefer, about 40-page regional summary report, which is also available in Spanish and English. And I'd just like to show you the Venezuelan chapter from that report. It's a wonderful job led by Maria Tapia, and has this beautiful mural from Venezuela as the cover title. So why take on the challenge of food and nutrition security? Well, this is one, as I mentioned at the beginning, one of the major global challenges that the world faces. Still estimated that the global population may peak around 10 billion people. It's estimated to get to about 9.3 billion around 2050. That's roughly a 30% increase over the present size. But what is surprising is that the UN projects that global food demand will grow not by 30%, but by something closer to 70%, owing to shifts to more protein-rich diets as countries become wealthier. So this great growth in demand must be met in an environmentally sustainable manner with minimal additions of arable land, because the arable land inventory of the globe is pretty well used up. So how do we meet these challenges? Well, one of the key things that we need are the human resources. To me, that we need to incentivize and attract the best young minds into science and technology and health careers to help us address this looming problem. In countries which have experienced the loss of scientists, we need to find ways to encourage ties to expatriate scientists. We need to find ways to incentivize and encourage companies in the developing world to invest in in-house research. There's very little of that done at present. In the developed countries like the US or Canada, companies play a big role in agricultural research, but that's not so true in the developing world. And we need to provide incentives to reduce the transfer of STH talent from the developing to the developed world. What about the nutrition side of this equation? Well, a couple of the sort of big picture conclusions are, first, that adequate nutrition and foodborne diseases are a problem in all countries of the Americas, independent of their level of economic development. Non-communicable diseases, that's things like diabetes, heart disease, etc., are a major source of mortality and morbidity in many countries of the Americas, owing in part to the obesity epidemic. This creates a large burden on public health systems and is responsible for premature mortality in all of our countries. Now, another big conclusion of the report is that the Americas are a privileged region compared to the rest of the world. And in fact, the Americas, Brazil, Argentina, Canada, the US, all play big roles in the export of agricultural commodities. The region's wealth and agrobiodiversity, arable land, and availability of water all constitute major advantages for the future. So things don't look as bad in our region of the world as they do in some other regions of the world. But, and this is a big caveat, these advantages are threatened by environmental degradation. Secondly, it is hard to overemphasize the importance of governance and public policy in achieving both food and nutrition security and developing more sustainable agricultural policies. Food shortages are often associated with weak or failing governmental institutions. So a key global conclusion is that the Americas will be critically important in the future of the world in feeding 10 billion people. But a challenge for the Americas will be to retain the ability to feed and adequately nourish itself, as well as making an important contribution to the food supplies available to the rest of the world. So the bottom line is that it is critically important that science and scientists achieve a much higher degree of influence throughout the world. Making international science organizations as effective as possible is a key step in that direction. And so I'd like to just conclude by saying that we are all in the same boat together, trying to build the institutional capacity that allows us to adapt to a challenging future. Thanks so much. It's wonderful to have the opportunity to talk with you.
Thank you very much, Professor Clegg, for this interesting and comprehensive presentation. I think perhaps Dr. Bifano has some comments, initial comments.
Well, I know quite well all this concerns expressed by Mike. It was a matter of discussion during years in the meetings in Guyana. The problem we have in Latin America, however, is the lack of science. We are losing in all Latin American our science because there is not the sustain from the government to create the adequate condition to make of science a way to develop the country. The relationship between the academies and the government has been always very weak.
Right.
Yes, it's true that all our country have Academy of Science, but it's also true that the role that this academy play in the context of the public policy to develop the country are close to zero.
Right.
Okay. Now, what is the most important issue in capacity building for our country? To build new capacity, to improve, to make the young people get into the scientific career. But it's very difficult to do it if our country don't have international support. The specific case of Venezuela. Venezuela needs desperately international support to revitalize our science system.
Yes.
That has been really, Michael, has been destroyed.
Yeah.
Okay, so all this conceptual argument are very important, but we face a very adverse situation. And this is not only in Venezuela. Same thing is happening in Brazil now.
Right.
Believe it or not.
Right.
Same thing is happening in Mexico. And you know that very well. Colombia, that was showing some efficiency in applying science and technology for development, has been arrested.
Right.
So the important thing in capacity building, I think, would be the commitment, international commitment to help the building of new capacity of doing science.
Yeah, no, I quite agree and understand that it is really difficult to help or to achieve any of these aspirations under circumstances where governmental support is absent, and that is just a huge issue. And there are things that can be done from the outside, but they are limited. I think the sort of things that need to be done from the outside are the kinds of things that help build human resources, providing scholarship, fellowship, and training opportunities abroad, finding ways to better connect expatriate science communities with those working in the country, finding ways to integrate scientists into global research projects where they can take advantage of assets that are present elsewhere. All of those are possibilities, but I agree that the challenge is huge and the tools available to us to address it at the national level are pretty limited. I know you and I have had this conversation many times. and I wish sincerely that it were possible to be more helpful.
And we will appreciate that because you're a very influential person in international science diplomacy. And so I hope that this will be your role as a member of our academy, to help us to get into the move of this matter.
Yes, I agree. I will do my very best to be of help. So I see another hand.
Yeah.
Professor Goldwasser?
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I have to say that it has been an outstanding presentation, really, very, very good. And well, right now, as Claudio said, and you know that, is for us it's very, very difficult to achieve what you are showing to us. Because, well, as he said before, science has been destroyed completely. We have a lot of people going outside Venezuela to work in other universities and other institutions to do research, because here it's almost impossible. It's a matter of the state to destroy the university, to destroy. We scientific and the academies are seen for our government as enemies. And they will try to, to keep us as down as possible. But we have been in this way by 20 years already. And I think that conference we have given to us, we have to keep it, because I am sure, being positive, that we will reach that, not right now, but in the sooner time, not so far away, not so far away. Really, I think it's really, really smart conference, and I enjoy very much all the information you are giving to us.
Thank you. I'm very honored to be a small part of your academy, and I've had the privilege of visiting Venezuela many times, and appreciate its natural beauty and the wonderful people who work there. And I also hope that in some way I can be of use to you and an asset to your academy.
Thank you, Dr. Clegg. Many academic fellows are expressing in the chat about your excellent presentation, wonderful and useful conference, useful and key information about the means and mission of our science academies, great presentation, excellent conference. So, and I don't know if there is you have another question, Dr. Goldwasser, or if...
Well, no, I just want to express how much I enjoy the conference, how important it is for the development of our country, but not a question. No, I don't really have a question especially for that. And we have we have in Llanas, we have Venezuela. Our academy has participated in most of the program they have, but as Claudio just stated, well, it's not easy. It's not easy but we keep doing something. Really, we have the feeling that we're going that way.
Dr. Lampo has a question.
Yes, first, yeah, just a comment. First, well, thank you for your presentation. It was very interesting, and you're very welcome. And I think that the task that you will have with us is a very different one, probably from other countries, because rather than helping governments to support the academies, your task, or what we need help is how to get the other academies to help our academy to protect against the destruction of scientific institutions.
Yes, right.
So,
I
believe it's a completely different sort of approach.
Yes, I think, yeah, that is a hugely important question. And I think that one of the more effective things that academies can do is to shine a light on the risks to scientific institutions through the science press, getting articles in prominent journals like Science or Nature, and through in other means, because those who do bad things don't like to have a light shined on their activity. And so making it clear that important institutions are in jeopardy is important to protect them. And I think that's one of the levers that we have that we can try and use more effectively. You know, one of the things that Ioannis did a long time ago, about a decade ago, that I thought worked very well, and I'd love to see it be able to do again. And Claudio was there and will remember this. We actually hosted a workshop with prominent science journalists. We held the meeting in Buenos Aires.
Yes.
And it was a wonderful opportunity to have a dialogue with them, to understand their perspective, but also to develop a relationship with them that allowed us to feed back to them useful stories. And we need to do that again to try and help publicize some of the challenges that our colleagues face everywhere. And Claudio mentioned Brazil and Mexico. I could add Nicaragua to that list. This is a difficult time where what are called illiberal governments are becoming more prominent than they were before. So it is a period of threat, and we need to find ways to stand up for the value system of science that we all believe in, and to make sure that people understand the value system under which we work.
Yes, we sent, I think, I remember we sent about 2 or 3 journalists, but it was a decade ago in Buenos Aires.
Right.
I don't know if now we would be able to find some journalists interested in science in Venezuela. I know that our is a very particular or peculiar situation. However, there is where I think the international organization should put, the finger and help.
Yes.
And help to we are still alive, and we will keep struggling for keeping science as it should be.
Yes.
Okay? We are doing that. We are committed with science. Our academy will make their best effort to do that. But our message is that we can't do that by ourselves.
Yes. No, I
Only.
Right, absolutely. No, I quite agree. And I think it is, part of our global responsibility to, just as capacity building is,
Sure,
to try and find ways to help our colleagues who are in stressful situations.
we're counting on you.
That's good, Claudio. That's good, Claudio.
Thank you in advance.
We're counting on you, yes.
Okay, Dr. Marisol Tapia, who is the first author of the chapter you nicely show in your presentation, have a question for you.
Yes. Hello. I just want to thank you for your excellent presentation, and also for mentioning the book on food and nutrition security, which was so challenging to prepare, as you know. And yes, and I also would like to make a comment. Precisely in that context, And it is that I have always observed with fascination and perhaps with some envy the importance of the National Academy of Science, Engineering, and Medicine in the United States. And I will cite a particular example, which is the revision by the Academy of something as important as the recommendation of the food bound to one of the main social programs of the government, which is the WIC program, Women, Infant, and Children, which serves approximately half of all the babies born in the United States. And the food package is designed to ensure adequate nutrition for mothers and children. Yes. And foods are offered through WIC packages, which must align to with the dietary guideline for Americans. But which are revised every 5 years. Yes. But the United States Congress requires that every 10 years, the WIC package food assessment be conducted. And who does that? The Academy. The latest revision was ordered by the National Academy of Sciences and Engineering and Medicine in 2017.
Right.
And the final recommendation, the final reports were wonderful. Recommended changes, including adding fish, increasing the amount of whole food, whole grains, lots of fruits and vegetables, less juices, sugar added juices, and fresh food for babies. So I just wanted to make that comment because I find that so wonderful, and I look at that with such envy because we have social programs which are so poorly designed and we never have the opinion of experts on something as important as the food social programs.
Right.
That's a comment I just wanted to make.
Yeah. Well, I don't know that there's really anything I can add to your comment. I do feel that it is a great example of the kind of role that academies can play. And it doesn't mean that the government always listens. There are other vested interests in the system which sometimes work against nutritionally best advice, as you know. But, I guess I'm an optimist. I love this, this famous saying of Martin Luther King, which was that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. And that's, what I hope, but it's it requires a long struggle of very good people to make that happen.
Yeah, right. Thank you, Mike.
Oh, thank you. It's wonderful to see you again.
Hi, wonderful to see you.
Thank you, Dr. Clegg. I think we have no more questions, so
it's the time to, to give to present him with the diploma or the diploma.
Your diploma.
Well, I just speaking for myself, I'm greatly honored. I do hope that I will have a chance to come back to Venezuela. It's the first country in South America I ever visited. My first visit was to Merida, actually, over 40 years ago. And I feel I have many friends in Venezuela, and I hope I can be of value to you. I'm honored by the association.
We'll invite you when we have, when we'll be safe to come into Venezuela.
Thank you. Oh,
So I will read, I'm going to present the diploma. I said I'm going to present it in Spanish because it's written in Spanish, okay? It said, la Academia de Ciencias Físicas, Matemáticas y Naturales, atendiendo a la ilustración, méritos científicos y demás circunstancias recomendables que distinguen al doctor Michael Clegg, ha tenido a bien elegirlo en la sesión del día 3 de abril del 2013, miembro correspondiente extranjero en Estados Unidos. Y para que pueda hacerlo constar, se expide este diploma y firmado por la presidenta y refrendado por la secretaria y autorizado con el sello de la academia. Entonces, dado en Caracas a los 16 días del mes de junio del 2021. Entonces, now in English, I will say that the Academy of Physical, Mathematical, and Natural Science is really pleased to have Dr. Michael Clegg among its foreign corresponding members with a broad scientific and professional career. On behalf of the corporation, I present you the diploma that accredits you as such. I will send you the diploma in physical.
Muchas gracias.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to be with you.